Steve Mascord, and this is a really special episode because we're going to be introducing you to a brand new program, and believe it or not, a brand new channel on YouTube. Before I introduce our guest, we've just seen an NRL game, and it's sort of played in the shadows of State of Origin. 36-12, Cronulla over West Tigers out at CommBank Stadium, and we will be talking about that later. And the other thing I really want to do is I want to thank some patrons: Leonard Gregory, Michael Benson, Peter Wood, Mark Killeen, Brad Walter, Graham Thompson, Richard Frodlin, Matt George, and of course Vivek Nayak. Thank you very much. And also we're going to have a special discount on merch. I'll tell you a bit later on how you can get a Cronulla jersey for £10 off and a free membership of Leagues Back Pages for a whole year. Total value there is 30 Aussie dollars. But firstly, I want to introduce our guest, Tony the Mole Adams. Tony, how are you?
Very good, Steve. We haven't seen each other live for a while, but it's good to see you here now and be part of this exciting new venture.
We've got to keep people in suspense a little bit about that. We won't tell them what's going on for a little bit now. But Tony, and I was back in Australia, but you were a bit crook at the time, so we didn't cross paths, but hopefully next time. We just had a match. It was a bit low key, wasn't it? Like I was sitting there putting some content up on the website, and I must admit I didn't write much. Probably only wrote about 5 pars. It was a bit low key. What'd you make of it?
Yeah, look, this time of year we tend to blame Origin for these sort of games, but I don't think there was barely an Origin player between these two sides. So it was just a pretty flat game. I guess the only good thing for the Tigers is they've gone from 74-0 to, what was it, 36 to 12?
Well, it was 12 all at half time, right, Tony? So I guess they would have walked off at half time pretty happy with themselves.
Yeah, and it was a home game for the Tigers at Parramatta, one of their 12 home grounds. But the fans there were excited, and they had to dig the Tigers, which Tim Sheen's a good mate of mine, as you know, and I'm sure that's what all he would have said to them this week. We got to have a dig. We've got to go out there and show our fans we're better than we were last week. And hopefully there'll be no repeats of that, because they broke all sorts of records last week, and of course all for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Now these sort of shows tend to have like catchphrases or hashtags, and we've got to come up with some. I'll explain why later. But one thing I have done on earlier versions of White Line Fever kicks has been a thing called love hate. Do you love it? Do you hate it? And there's really only one thing we can discuss today, Tony, which is the RLPA media ban in response to the delays in the collective bargaining agreement. Do you love it or do you hate it?
Yeah, I'm a bit each way, because I think there's a bit of a misconception with this thing, in that those who are anti the players, and I think the NRL is sort of pushing this line that it's all about greed and after more money. As far as I can tell, it's none of that. It's basically the players wanting more of a say in the way the game's run, more of a say in collective bargaining, more of a say in the fact that they're playing more games. So I can sort of see the players' point of view. So I sort of side with the players there. So I guess it's a little bit of love.
Yeah, I guess some of these, as I said, people on these panel shows, I think they work out before they go on, and they're going to argue opposite points of view, even if they don't actually think that. But I'm a little bit the same as you. I think the one problem we've got, even us, who have time to look into it a bit more than people who just sort of get a grab, is that it hasn't been super well explained. So one of the interesting things that has been discussed is at the internationals at the end of the year, that the NRL wants everyone to be paid the same from the Southern Hemisphere countries, and the players want the internationals outside the collective bargaining agreement. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, Clint Newton, if you're watching, but they want the countries, aside from Australia, to be able to work out their own agreements. And obviously, these other countries can't afford to pay players as much as Australia and New Zealand can. So it's kind of really interesting that the NRL are now pushing international footy as one of the sticking points, and they're the good guys, when the Kangaroos hardly ever play, and I don't think anyone thinks that the NRL or the ARLC until now have been the good guys in international rugby league. They've been perceived as the bad guys. They pulled out of the World Cup, forcing it to be delayed, and all that sort of stuff. And it now seems that they're kind of using international footy a little bit in the kind of in the media war and the propaganda war.
Yeah, very true. And as you say, Australia basically and the NRL don't have a great name in the worldwide league community, because they put the NRL first and foremost. And it's a very good point you've made. And it was interesting watching tonight's game. We didn't have the fairly lame, I've got to say, interviews at halftime with the players saying, yeah, we did good and we got to keep it up in the second half. And so I don't think it's a massive bargaining chip the players have got, to be honest. The press conference, I imagine the coach will be there. He'll give the standard lines. So, yeah, it's not a massive issue. I think a lot of fans probably didn't even notice.
Yeah, the big thing is, though, I think people kind of, and if you watch the Nines or the Foxes, you get the impression that the journos actually are really mortally offended by this. And actually, everyone likes to go home early. I know you don't drink, Tony, but back in the day, everyone liked to go to the pub early. And so if the players aren't talking and you don't have to stand in a cold corridor for an hour, it's happy days. And their bosses, the bosses are motivated by competition. So your boss obviously wants you to get an interview with the man of the match, but if he knows that the opposition aren't going to get him either, your boss doesn't care either. So it's actually what I think it does hurt the NRL, in that the NRL undertake contractually to give their rights holders access, and it helps the programs on Fox run smoothly, and it helps it helps now the social media and the grabs and the Instagram, everything. And so what the players are doing is they're putting the NRL in breach of contract with Fox and Nine and the radio to a lesser extent. I'm sure they wouldn't worry if the radio got up and left, and so they, and with tickets to sell next Wednesday for the State of Origin, they're also getting less content of feel good, come to the match, get excited about the match content. So I think that you're right. The journos aren't really hurting, and I'm not sure the fans are hurting that much. I actually think it does work. The NRL are the ones who hurt the most, because they can't sell tickets. It creates tension between them and the people who open their doors every day, which are the media companies, and it highlights negatives about them as opposed to positives. So I do think it hurts the NRL, no matter how much people try to defer it and say that it doesn't.
Yeah, it's a fair point, but I think you're sort of talking very much about the media in our day. The media that I know at the moment is all about just getting it up there as quickly as possible, getting people to click on it, meeting your deadlines. It's not the intense competition we had back in the day. There's certainly an element of that. But I know, as you say, the journos are happy to go home. I think the editors are happy to just put it up there and call it quits for the night. And not worry about getting scooped, not worry about having to wait for players to have a shower, to sign autographs, and finally, talk to the media. So yeah, it's a complex issue and a bit each way. But you can, your bottom line is right. You can bet the NRL aren't happy, and as you say, they've got this massive game. Well, what should be a massive game coming up next Wednesday. I've had a heap of people in Sydney saying to me, "How can I get rid of my tickets?" And again, it highlights the inefficiencies of the NRL. There was always a danger of this happening when you play the third game of a series in Sydney, that Queensland were going to be leading 2-0 and we'd have a half-empty stadium. I know Sydney people, and they're spoilt with their choices. They don't want to go and watch Queensland win and do a lap of honour on the stadium. So I know plenty of Sydney people who won't want to be there. Now, of course, they love to peddle a line of, we don't we don't want to whitewash and all this sort of thing. But bottom line is the series is done and dusted. And the NRL, I think, will have learned a harsh lesson. You play the final game of the series on a neutral venue. Should have been game 1 Sydney or Brisbane, game 2 Sydney or Brisbane, game 3 Adelaide. I don't think Adelaide people would have cared if it was a dead rubber. It's an event for them and they would have gone along.
Now, Tony, you're the expert on player movements, transfer speculation. So we're going to move to that in a second. But I do want to offer all the viewers as a special sort of introductory treat, because the winners today were the Sharks overnight. Most of you are watching this, I hope, on Friday morning and over the weekend. So Thursday night's game, 36-12, Cronulla over West Tigers. And because I'm based in the UK, I'm going to talk in pounds. So it's basically 10 pounds is about $18. So it's $18 off a Sharks jersey, which are already very cheap. They're only about 100 Aussie. And the link I'll put in the comments section down the bottom, not in the comments, but in the details section. And the code to get 10 pounds or $18 off an already cheap Sharks jersey is YouTube. So I'll put the link in the comments down below. And all orders over 20 pounds, or that's about $38 or $37, I give a free subscription to League's Back Pages, which is the first ever news archive for rugby league copy going all the way back to the 80s. Yeah, it's a good deal. Now, Tony, Ben Hunt is the guy everyone is talking about, I guess, and he wanted out immediately, and now he's sticking around. And now there's a lot of speculation that he'll be sticking around. I don't know. Is it possible he'll stick around beyond this year? And what else are you hearing as far as player movements? I'm hearing Jake Clifford from Hull might be heading back to Australia at the end of the current season. So give us your best, Tony. Give us your best, and tell everyone where they can read the Mole every week and what you've been writing about this week.
Yeah, well, the Mole, for those of you who haven't seen me for a few years, was on Rugby League Week. When Rugby League Week died, I moved to Wide World of Sports, Channel 9, and you can get me on Twitter at 9_Moley. I've got about 165,000 followers, which is a couple of thousand more than the Broncos, and I consider that one of my great claims to fame, that I'm edging out the Broncos leading into the finals. But they might have a say in that if they start winning a few more games, who knows. But yeah, let's attack the Ben Hunt thing first. I think basically you're right. It's untenable. I know Shane Flanagan wants him to stay. Of course he'd want him to stay. He's their best player. I reckon if you took Ben Hunt out of the Dragons team, they wouldn't have won a game this year. That's how influential he's been. The Broncos, of course, tried nabbing him in what would have been a real coup for the rest of this season, but I'm pretty sure you can put your money on him at the Titans next year, and what a great signing he'll be for them. Probably the biggest signing they've ever had, and they've got the base of a good side. The Titans, you throw Ben Hunt in there, and they're definite top 8, if not top 4 material.
Yeah, that's it's obviously a big story, and we had an opinion piece by Brian Lowe just on rugbyleaguehub.com, which I'll also put a link in the comments or in the details, where he said that you shouldn't be able to switch clubs mid-season, but over here in England they switch clubs for 2 weeks and switch back. So I think things might be heading in the other direction. We don't want to stay on too long for our first episode, but first episode of what? And the news is that Tony Adams, the Mole, is launching his own YouTube channel, and that this show will flip-flop for the rest of this year between my channel and his, and it'll be called Moley and Maskey. You put him first because he told us how many Twitter followers he's got. Moley and Maskey when it's on his channel, and it will stay for the rest of this year as White Line Fever Live on mine, and we'll also do an audio podcast as well. So Tony, exciting times, and obviously there are a lot of former players who are starting YouTube channels, and they've certainly got a niche because it's there's a lot of matey conversation, allows people behind the scenes. I saw James Graham talking to Justin Horro just yesterday. I don't know about my idea is we're not going to pretend to be players. We're not going to pretend to be everyone's friend. But hopefully we've been around long enough to be able to give you a different type of insight to those fellas. And along the way, we'll have some guests as well.
Yeah, well, I think we've got about 70 years of experience between us. I think
you got 65 of those. Yep.
Yes. I remember one day we were at Steelers Stadium or whatever it was called back then, and we saw Stanley the Steel Avenger get involved in a stink with the players and get sent off by the referee. They're the sort of things we can bring to light that just show how far back we go, how times have changed. Could you imagine if a mascot got involved in a fight these days? He'd probably end up in jail and front page of the paper, you name it.
Yep, yeah, and also there's the original story about that day, and I promise we didn't. There's another camera here. I'm pointing the other camera, but I promise we didn't set this up beforehand. But the original story I wrote that day is on League's back pages, so I'll put that link down there as well. We'll finish up with some tips. Okay, so it's a split round, so we eased ourselves in. We're only going to do NRL. We will have Super League content in the weeks coming up, but let's make it easy to start with. Okay, so tomorrow, the Dragons and the Raiders, St George Illawarra and Canberra. Who are you tipping there, Tone?
Well, as I said a minute ago, Ben Hunt is so influential with the Dragons. With him missing, even though the Raiders got a couple out, I think Canberra will be too strong. Should win fairly comfortably by about 10 to 12, I reckon.
I do remember the first time the Raiders went to Wollongong, 1982, just to show off how old I am. And the Steelers beat them 45-0. And the next week, the Steelers went up to Henson Park and were beaten by Newtown 51-0. So that was a 96-point turnaround. Okay, and Saturday, the Eels and the Warriors. What do you reckon?
Yeah, look, under normal circumstances, the Eels, but they got some key players missing. I think if Sean Johnson plays, there's a bit of doubt about him because of his wife about to give birth to their second child, and he's a bit reluctant to cross the Tasman. But the latest news I heard is he's probably going to play, and with that in mind, I think the Warriors will get the money. And
two more games, Tony. We've got South Sydney, who seem to have hit a bit of a bump mid-season, taking on the not so mighty Bulldogs.
Yeah, normally Souths would be shoe-ins there, but they're missing a hell of a lot of players. There's still no sign of Latrell, Cody Walker, Kolomatangi. They're both in Origin. Campbell Graham's in Origin. Damien Cook's in Origin. That's all their strike players. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is close. I would take, if you're a betting man, take the Dogs with a start.
And finally, Battle of Southeast Queensland, Gold Coast and the Dolphins.
Yeah, that's hard because they both got plenty of Origin players, but I think the poor old Dolphins really hit the wall the last few weeks. They've realised just how tough it is. Injuries have been unkind to them. Origins hit them hard. So, yeah, I'll take the Titans in that one.
My tips are Raiders, Warriors, Rabbits, and Titans. Okay, for the people listening to the audio podcast, I've got a great interview about don't laugh like a schoolboy, Tony, but I've got the guest talking about his love of rugby league and round the grounds is Ray Arn from the punk band The Hard-Ons. So he'll be up next for the people listening. For everyone else, we'll be back next week, and there'll be some exciting new information across social media about how you can get onto Tony's channel. And once we get we get that ticking over, this show will probably move full time over his channel. At the moment, we're going to flip flop 1 week to the next. Tony, exciting times ahead. Thanks for joining us.
Been a pleasure and looking forward to it, Steve.